Hi, hope you all are safe and sound. I'm Kashish Pava, the Vice President of Finance and Investment Cell, Shahid Bhagat Singh Evening College, and the host for today's podcast session. I welcome you all on this expedition of the Finance Burrito, a podcast series themed on bringing forward the notion of finance and investment in general. I would like to introduce you to Mr. Willem Malhotra as a speaker for today's podcast session on the theme financial literacy. Mr. Willem Malhotra is a chartered accountant, a first class commerce graduate from Delhi University. He is currently working with Hindustan Unilever Limited as a member of the financial planning and analysis team. His previous roles include a consultant at PepsiCo and a deputy finance manager at Indraprastha Gas Limited. So, without any further stall, let's dive right in for our first question. So, are you ready with it? Let's
Yeah, let's let's
Okay, so
start.
let's dive right in. Yeah. So my first question includes, how would you define being financially literate? What does that term encompass for a college student?
Okay. So basically, financially literate being means if an individual is financially aware, or he's the kind of behavior that he has and the skills that he possesses in order to make a sound financial decision, we can say that an individual is financially literate. Now, talking about further about financial literacy, uh, it is not only like that an individual knows that what's a savings account or how they need to make savings. It's more to it, like understanding the complex concepts like time value of money, or the concepts of understanding the power of compounding, and further going into the complex situations of mutual funds, stock markets. That is when we say that an individual is financially literate and he understands the concepts of investments and the power of investment, that how can a small amount can turn into a big juncture. That's what financially literate being means. When coming to now sharing some other facts, like currently the situation in India of financially literate. So the literacy rate in India, as you must be aware, is around 80%. But when it comes to financial literacy, the rate is around 27 to 30%, which is very low. And also, as a matter of fact, Mumbai, that is the financial capital of India, it is the financial capital, but the financial literacy rate in Mumbai is the lowest when compared to other states. So that's also a one thing fact. Now, talking about for a college student, what it means. Even for a college student, I don't think it's much different. As a college student, also you should be
That's
aware that.
great. So, moving on to the third question, a few common mythbusters are there for regarding the credit cards. So, credit card is a tool that has recently been hyped due to increased variety and volume of reward programs. There are a few myths regarding credit cards. First being the credit card limit means spending all the way up to that point. And the second one is having multiple credit cards is bad for a credit, and credit card terms are non-negotiable. Are these mere myths or are these justified according to you?
Okay. So, first of all, credit cards, I think, is an amazing credit facility given to a person. I personally have 7 to 8 credit cards currently. So, I think that's an amazing facility. If used in a judicious manner, I think you can do wonders with it. You can get rewards, etc., and it you can use it all. And obviously, the credit facility means that if you don't have funds at that point in time, it can be used when needed. So, talking about the myths, can you just go one by one so I can just uh,
Yes,
yeah.
for sure. First is the credit card limit means spending all the way up to that point.
So, I would say that is obviously a myth. If you have a credit card limit, that doesn't mean that you have to spend it till that limit. Spending half of it or whatever portion of it, or even full, doesn't affect your credit score. So suppose you have like 1 lakh of a limit and you are spending just 10,000 out of it. That doesn't mean that the credit score will go down. That's not the case. uh, it's not necessary that you spend up to 1 lakh. It is up to you, whatever the need, according to your need you can spend. And so I would say that this is totally a myth, and you can use it up till you want.
Okay,
Next.
that's great. Next is having multiple credit cards is bad for your credit. But since you said that you have 7 to 8 credit
Yes.
cards, I don't think that is
So I have 7 to
justified.
8 credit cards, and also my credit score is pretty good. It's in the excellent range. So I don't think that is affecting my credit score at all. So that is again a myth. So you can have as many credit cards you want. Actually, it improves your credit score when you have more
Okay,
credit cards and you're spending obviously using those
more of
credit
it.
cards. So more of it. So it won't affect your credit score at all. So again, that's a myth. Yeah.
Okay. Third one is credit card terms are non-negotiable.
So as far as credit card terms are concerned, initially when you get a credit card, it is sort of non-negotiable, because that will be your first credit card and your credit score is still not generated. So initially you would have to work according to the bank's terms. But once you get a credit card, your credit score is generated, then you are always in a position to negotiate with the bank, since you are the bank's customer, and for them it's a product and they want to sell that product. That's simple. They want to increase their revenues, they want to sell the product. So they will want you buy it at any cost. So if even if you negotiate with them, they will be in a position to negotiate. So it is not that it is always non-negotiable. Initially it could be, because you are new to that and you don't have a credit score, so you will have to accept the as it is the terms that banks is possessing to you. But going forward, you can negotiate with them.
So does it like, for example, I have okay, for example, I have a good credit score, and so I can negotiate the terms accordingly. Or is it like if I have a low credit score, can I negotiate the terms then also?
If you have a low credit score, then there's a possibility that they won't come up to you for the credit card if you have a low credit score.
Okay,
And even if they come, then you won't be in a good position to negotiate with them. But if you have an excellent credit score, they know that selling this product to this person, will spend, and he or she will be paying money on time. That's the main agenda. They want to get their money back on time. And the more so how they earn, the more transactions you do. So they don't charge you for their credit card normally. So out of the 7 8 credit cards I have, they don't charge me at all. They say that you spend up to this limit and your annual fee is free. So how they earn,
okay,
basically whenever you swipe, they get the money from the Visa or the Mastercard. So they want you to swipe more. That's it. And talking about the terms, if you have a good credit score, you can negotiate with them. If you have a low credit score, it will be a bit difficult negotiating with them. On a good credit score, they
okay.
know that we have to sell this product to him or her, so they will then negotiate with you.
Obviously, yeah, got that. Okay, so moving on to the next question. What forms of external financing have dominated our country in the area of financing the development of innovative startups?
Okay. So talking about startups, startup is something like, it happens very rare that it comes out of a founder's brainwave, and also is backed by a strong idea. But then it has its own treasure trunk also. So that happens very rarely. So so obviously all the startups in India or outside India, majorly they need financing. They need external financing. They need external help. So two other major sources for them that they have is equity financing and debt financing. So
Okay,
firstly, talking about equity, I would say more it is the equity financing that has dominated the country currently. More of equity financing is used, and equity financing basically means that whosoever the investor, actually you are sharing the ownership with that investor. You are giving the equity share in your company with them, and in for that equity share, you're getting the money, you're getting the funding for your venture. So an equity financing, it is majorly the angel investors and the
Yeah.
venture capital firms. So talking about angel investors, basically these are the real life business angels, you can say, who have deep pockets. So basically they are the high net worth individuals who, if they are if they are happy with the idea, if they are fully convinced with the idea that the startup is coming up with, they will use their deep pockets and they will invest in you. And obviously in return they will be taking the equity or the convertible debt, and that is most of the times it is not an optionally convertible debt. It has to be converted into equity at a future point in time. And
Okay.
also SEBI also has some regulations on the angel investors. It's like in a scheme only maximum of 200 angel investors can invest, and they also need to have a lock-in period of 1 year, and the startup has to be like not more than 5 years old. So that is what angel investors are. Then talking about the venture capital firms, these are the businesses that actually what they do, they raise funds from different sources and finally use those raised funds to fund the startup. So that is what venture capital firms are. And then after equity financing, the other option which is not very much used in India especially is the debt financing. So debt financing is simple, that from the banks and financial institutions you are raising loans, you're getting loans from them or some other debenture instruments and raising the funds. And these could be used for like initial funding or additional funding that they need, or even for the working capital requirements of the startups. So that is how debt financing works.
Yeah, but in today's time, since we have a lot of startups coming up, especially during this lockdown period,
Right.
I don't you think the debt financing was more in trend as compared to equity and the other thing that you mentioned? I guess taking loans from bank is much easier than getting into all sort of equity financing.
Yes. So taking loans from banks or financial institutions is much easier. But on the other hand, when it comes to repaying, so basically, you must be aware that even the biggest of the startups are running into losses. Even Zomato. So Zomato has recently launched its
Yeah,
IPO. I am not sure if you are aware. So
yeah. We are aware.
okay. So they've recently launched their IPO. So even they are running into losses. So it is one of the biggest startups in India. It is running into losses. So when you are into losses and then repaying the debts, that becomes a miserable situation for you. So currently, the startups in India are more into equity financing. So when Zomato needed funds, so they have raised around 9,000 crores with this IPO.
Yes,
So and that is
exactly.
clearly equity financing. So raising an
Okay,
IPO
yeah.
and from the public. So here it is not the angel investors, not the private equity firms. It is the qualified institutional buyers. It is the retail public, that is you and me, right? So it is currently, since it is very easy to get a debt, but it is not that easy for a startup to repay that debt. So for that, they prefer more of equity financing, where they can get that support from the equity holder.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's sorted out much. Okay, moving on to the next question. Will further mergers and acquisitions in the investment banking sector increase the credit systemic risk in the economy?
Okay. So basically, first one needs to know what credit risk actually is. So for a financial institution or a bank, uh, if the borrower is not able to pay the cash flows, that is the principals and the interest, so that becomes a credit risk for the financial institution. Now that credit risk is further classified as a risk, a firm specific credit risk, and one that, as you mentioned, systematic credit risk. So firm specific credit risk is something that is uh, where the risk of default is only confined to a specific project or a specific industry. But when we talk about the systematic credit risk here, when there is a risk of default and is gonna affect the whole economy of a country or even the global economy, that is something systematic credit risk. Now, talking about if the mergers and acquisitions of the investment banking firms will affect the system, will increase the systematic credit risk. Here, on that, I think that in the initial run, it is a positive move. Merging the investment banks, initially it will be positive move because when you merge, it will lead to cost minimization. It will lead to the technological development in the industry. Plus, synergies will get created. So, leading to that, I think it's a positive move initially. But when we talk about the long run, when the big banks are merged and the risk, and if there is a risk of default by any of the borrowers, so since now the big banks are working together, if there is a default, that will affect the whole economy, and obviously that will increase the systematic credit risk in the country as well as the global economy. So that is a risk. And also the central bank for India is the Reserve Bank of India. It plays a major role in that. So understanding the mergers happening, accepting those, approving those, if they make decisions that is not worth it, or that are not good decisions, and they don't understand the real gravity of the situation when it is when the banks are being merged, that can create a situation increasing the systematic credit risk. So central bank, even the central bank plays an important role when it comes to these mergers and acquisitions.
Okay, so since you said that even if one party makes a default, and that can affect the systematic credit risk, right? Okay, so how could we rectify this? I mean, there can be many parties which make defaults, and this way the systematic credit risk rating could increase or could decrease. So how can one rectify this situation then?
See, so that's it's very important. So just talking about the example of SBI first. Um, so currently, if you are aware that the Vodafone Idea has a lot of debts pending at their end.
Yes,
So yes, so but out of that, it's around 25 to 30,000 crores that they owe the banks. But how much is for just one bank, SBI? That is solely they to them they owe 11,000 crores. So rectification is basically in this scenario is taking the precautionary measures. Now SBI take, in my opinion, SBI taking a decision to lend 11,000 crores to VI, which I don't think has a great future. I think that was the worst decision that they have taken, as previously we've seen in cases of Vijay Mallya, etc. So
exactly.
taking such decisions of lending such a huge amount to a business, to in a business which we don't seem to have a future as of now, and is running into huge losses. So investing in that company was a bad decision for them. And what I understand by that is, whenever investment banking firms, even if they are working together, or if even if they are not merged and working solely, they need to understand where they are investing. They need to take wise decisions while they're investing their money, while they're putting their money and lending to the firms. So that is one thing I understand, that if you are precautious enough before lending that money, it would help in the end to get your money back, to get your cash flows back on time, and that will not lead to a credit risk. So that is very important.
Okay, so yeah, we need to take precautions then. This was an advice. Okay, so moving on to our last question: how can students become smart financial planners? How can they be proactive about their finances? Being a student, I am not really proactive about finances, so that was a major question I needed to ask.
So for a student, I think as the working professionals do, sometimes they also don't do this. But as a student, you need to, I think, create budgets. It is very important that whatever money you have in your hand, you create budgets for that, and understand where you need to spend and where you need not to spend, and work accordingly. So that is first thing that one needs to do. Then also, I understand, when once you are an adult, once you are in college, that doesn't mean that you will just depend on money of your parents. I think you should look for sources of earning, like as I initially also mentioned, internships, tutoring. Those could be the possibilities for becoming actually financially independent. And then other tip would be that one needs to learn to live within their means. Now, when I say that, I'm clearly not discouraging to think big. You can always think big. You can always think big, think to earn big and spend big. But till the time you're earning a limited amount of money, one should learn to be within that area and live in that means. So that would help you not to be in trouble when it comes to finances. And also, one can avoid accumulating debts. It could be small debts, since it's about the college students, but accumulating even small debts, you will have to struggle a bit. So those are the tips I think, if one follows, can manage their finances well.
Okay, so do you have any suggested reading materials?
Suggested reading materials, as in, for what? Like the normal basic concepts of financial literacy, or as we talked about the complex concepts.
The normal basic ones.
So, for the basic ones, I think there are certain, instead of going for books or the textbooks, there are certain apps available. One, I would say, Varsity is the app by Zerodha. So, if you will just go through it, you will understand the area of investing, understand the area of finances well, and it is very, very basic. It start with it has a basic module. So, just going through that, I think it would help you a lot and understand how things work. And if you want, even after the basics, you can just dive into the uh, this mutual funds, stock markets, etc. So it's up to you that till where you want to study that.
Okay, that's great. So that's it for the question part. And yeah, here we can end the session.
Yeah.
Anything you
Any
want to ask, or any question you have for us,
No,
or
I
you
don't
want to
have.
address the audience?
No, to so I don't have any questions as such, but for the audience, I would say all our college students. So to every one of you, I would say, first of all, be vigilant on your finances. It's very important. So and also, from now on itself, I would suggest that one should start investing and start understanding all the concepts, because once you enter the world of corporate or whatever thing that you want to do, not the corporates or something of your own, uh, being financially independent and being financially literate specifically will really help you in the future. So that's very important, and I would say all the best to all of you for all your coming future endeavors. That's it from my side,
Thank
and if you
you.
have any queries, you can ask.
No queries at all. I already asked you like 7 to 8 questions. That's enough.
No worries.
Okay. Thank you, Vivek. That was
Thank
so
you,
nice
thank you
talking
so
to
much.
you.
Thank you